So hi everyone again, welcome. My name is Kate Fettis and I'm with the Canada-Africa Partnership Network. And our program, the Africa Climate Action Initiative, is so happy to be running a project with support from the Rexdale Women's Centre, the City of Toronto right now, Community for Climate Action North Etobicoke. So this is a project that's been going since January of this year, and it's going to be running all the way up until May. It's a partnership-based project, so we're working with lots of different community partners. The Rexdale Women's Centre has been amazing, Cycle Toronto, the City of Toronto, Better Homes Toronto, and a number of others. And what we're trying to do with this project is just bring people together to talk about and learn about and take action on all of the different aspects of our lives that have to do with climate change. So this includes active transportation, includes energy savings, and it includes waste management, food management, all of these aspects that touch our lives every day that really we can be taking action on and contributing towards positive difference when it comes to our climate. So as part of this program, we're really excited to have Megan MacLean with us today. And so Megan leads climate action programming with the City of Toronto itself. So she's heading up community engagement for our city's climate action strategy, TransformTO. Some are quite familiar with TransformTO, and for some it's new. And so we wanted to bring Megan here so you can hear from the source what it's all about. And we're going to have a great hour together learning a little bit more about how that affects our community in North Etobicoke and more broadly in Toronto. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan, and then we'll be back at the end to share a little bit more about other upcoming sessions that you can take part in. But for now, I'll also just say if you have questions, you can type them in the chat box and we'll have a time to get to them. And we are recording this session, so you can always return to the information later and reference it and share it with your friends and family. So you're most welcome, everyone. Enjoy the session, and over to you, Megan.
Thank you so much, Katie, and thank you everyone for having me. It's nice to see some familiar faces and some new names. I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here to talk about TransformTO, our climate action strategy. I'm going to share some slides in a quick second, but I just wanted to highlight that I'm going to speak for some time, and then we're going to play a trivia game at the end. So I'm going to put it in the chat just so in case you've never played Kahoot before. It is easiest if you play on another device that you're not watching this presentation with. If you have a phone, or if you're playing on or if you are watching this on a computer and you don't have another device, you can also play on a browser. So you don't have to do anything now, but I just wanted to highlight that for later, that we will be playing a little game, and I'll orient you to it in a bit. So just going to share some slides here. Okay. Can everyone see my slides okay? Yes? Awesome. Yes. Okay. Perfect. Great. I can see a couple people, so I'll keep an eye on your faces here. So again, thank you so much for having me. My name is Megan. I work for the City of Toronto in the Environment and Energy Division. You would have seen some of my colleagues speak already, or I might have met you at your launch, but I'm delighted to be here again talking about TransformTO. So I'm going to go through a little bit of context about climate change, really briefly. I know this will not be a new conversation for most or all, but just to help you when you're talking about climate change with your friends and neighbors, one of the things that comes up the most, I think, is people having trouble understanding the difference between weather and climate. If you ever come across a climate denier, which is a very strange term and not something we really see in Toronto anymore, but you often hear things like, oh, it is warm outside, or it's cold outside today, so how can there be climate change, or what's global warming? People are confused about those terms. So the easiest way, I think, is to talk about like weather is like short-term stuff. It's what's happening outside. It's what's happening outside your window right now, where climate is more like long-term weather patterns, like over many years, and the patterns that we're seeing with the weather. So another way to look at it, which I find is super easy, is weather is what you should wear today, and climate is what is in your closet or in your storage if you are some kind of a clothing storage person in other for other seasons, but the weather says, I need to wear a coat today, and the climate is like what needs to be stored in your closet for to be year round. So that's sometimes an easy way to think about it, but weather and climate are two different things. So another thing that often comes up in conversation is the difference between global warming versus climate change. Really, you can use them interchangeable unless you're having a very technical conversation with someone, which I wouldn't recommend. But you can see here what the difference is between global warming and climate change. So global warming is a long-term trend, the rise in the Earth's temperatures, where climate change is the results of changes in our climate and what we're seeing on our planet. So we're seeing changes in precipitation, we're seeing droughts, heat waves, extreme weather, so on and so forth. So those are the impacts of climate change are something that we are seeing now. So just to bring it down to just like a local context. So what's challenging a little bit, I think, about talking about a global problem, a global environmental problem in a local context, it can be a bit challenging because people have a hard time understanding what can we do in this localized level that will really impact a global temperature. But there is lots we can do, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. And I think you're learning about that with your workshop series. There's lots of that we can do. So what does climate change look like in Toronto? It looks like this. This is a climate event you can see on your screen. And this is a real photo that we found on Instagram. The credit to the photographer is there. But this was when, this was in May 2017, when the Toronto Islands flooded significantly for the first time. They had flooded previously, but flooded very significantly for the first time. And it's the real photo of someone who kayaked up to right over onto the island to the picnic tables. So this was an extreme weather event, and this was due to an unusually warm winter with high rains, and the lake was about a meter higher than normal. So we saw some pretty devastating flooding that summer. We also saw flooding last summer and the summer before that, so that continues to be a problem. Other extreme weather events that we've seen in Toronto, we have seen flooding in other parts of the city. We've seen extreme heat. We've seen extended heat waves. We've seen like pretty serious storms. So those are the things that we've seen in Toronto already. So if you are having a conversation with your friends and neighbors about climate change, it might be helpful for people to understand the connection between some of these extreme weather events and climate change as a whole. So on your screen here, you can see the Toronto's future weather. So this is a modeling that we did actually some years ago, but this is what we would predict the future weather to be, but to 2050. And I don't show this to frighten anyone, even though it is concerning, but you can see a reflection here in what we're already seeing in Toronto in terms of our weather changes. So we are seeing some hotter days, we are seeing extended heat waves, and we are seeing higher daily rainfall maximums. And that's kind of confusing when we talk a little bit about drought, but then we are talking about having higher rainfall. Well, really on an annual basis, it will rain less, but when it rains really fast and really hard. So what happens is cities like Toronto, where we don't have, we have a lot of concrete, a lot of covered surfaces, our city isn't really built to deal with those kind of issues. So, so when we talk about these kind of problems, they create other problems in our city for our infrastructure. So, and our infrastructure isn't quite built for this kind of weather. So again, I don't show this to concern anyone or to scare you into what may be. There is lots and lots happening in our city, and we do not expect to get to this weather. We intend not to, but this is what it would look like if we were business as usual as of a couple of years ago. So we know that climate change is happening. We're seeing it in our city. We're seeing the extreme weather events, which are evidence of climate change happening in our city. We also know why climate change is happening. You would have heard this previously in other sessions as well, but we know climate change is happening because of the emissions in our environment. And we also know the main contributors to emissions in Toronto. I think that my colleague Ariana shared this earlier this week, if anyone was here at your session on Monday. But just to remind folks, our three main emission sources are our buildings, so how we heat, cool, and power our buildings, our transportation, so how we get around the city, and our waste. And these are the most updated information that we have. We do our inventory every year, but we're always a couple years behind. So 2018 is the most recent data that we have. And you can see here the breakdown. Over half of our emissions are attributed to our building energy. And to break this down just a little bit further to put it into context for folks, and you don't need to memorize any of these stats. We are doing a trivia game afterwards, but it's multiple choice, I promise. It's not a test. But just so it helps you to understand where our emissions are coming from. In the building sector, which a reminder is over half of our emissions in Toronto, over half of the emissions of those are actually our homes. So how we heat, cool, and power our homes. So just to be mindful of when you're thinking about climate action or talking about climate action, that there is a lot that we can do because it's really our home emissions that are having a big impact. And then further to that, in the transportation category, 73% of our emissions are coming from our own vehicles. So how we are getting around the city. And that's something that I think is hard for people to wrap their heads around when they see like big trucks thundering down the 401 or like lots of delivery vehicles and things like that, or planes, like those kind of things, or trains. But really, the emissions in Toronto attributed to transportation are from our personal vehicles. With the caveat that technically Pearson Airport is not in Toronto. So those emissions are not included with these, but this does include the aviation emissions from Billy Bishop Airport, which is technically in Toronto. And finally, with waste, so almost all of our waste emissions are coming from our landfills. The City of Toronto has about 150, 160 closed landfills, of which some we track the emissions from, but emissions from landfill are particularly concerning because the emissions are more damaging. So it's mostly methane emissions, which are more damaging to our environment. So almost all of our emissions attributed to waste are coming from those landfills. We also have one active landfill. I don't know if anyone knows where that one is. If you want to throw it in the chat, if you do. We have one active landfill for the City of Toronto, and that is near London, Ontario, actually. It's called the Green Lane Landfill. It's quite a large landfill. And if you've ever driven west on the 401, you might have smelled it even with your windows up, even in the dead of winter. So that landfill is the one active landfill that we have at this time. And the emissions associated with getting our waste to that landfill are actually included in our transportation emissions. So they're not actually included in the waste emissions. That's just primarily just our landfills. And a large part of those emissions from landfills is actually from our food waste. So if you're thinking about some projects in your community and a low-hanging fruit or an easy one for people to understand really is food waste, and that can make a big impact because you can tell folks that a lot of our waste emissions are coming from our landfill, and a lot of those emissions are actually from food waste. So just to keep that in mind. So another fun graph for everyone. This is actually, you don't need to memorize any of this stuff because it can take some time to examine and get your head around. But this is just to show you that as Toronto grows in our population and in our economy, as our economy grows, our emissions don't necessarily go up. It's the green line at the bottom there. This is actually our emissions to 2018, and they are actually going down as our population increases and as our economy expands. So that's an argument often you hear from folks that they're like, we're taking care of the climate to the detriment of our economy, and that's not necessarily true. In Toronto, it's definitely not true because we are seeing a separation between population growth and economy growth and our emissions. So just to turn it on its head a little bit. We can chat about how do residents feel about climate change. So we know that climate change is happening, we know why it's happening, but what we didn't know until a couple years ago is how Torontonians actually felt about climate change. And so we did a pretty big study of residents in Toronto, which actually we will likely be repeating this year. So that'll be interesting to see how people feel about climate in the context of our ongoing pandemic. But what we found was that overwhelmingly, folks like yourselves and Torontonians do care about climate change. They agree that climate change is a problem. And agree that everybody needs to reduce their emissions. So 91% of people in Toronto believe that everyone should reduce their emissions, including themselves. And over 80% of our folks are seeing a connection between extreme weather and climate change, which is actually really good. And if you compare to other municipalities in other countries, those numbers are not as high. So it's well, we don't want extreme weather events in Toronto, of course. It's helpful for people to understand climate change sometimes when you put it in the context of extreme weather in Toronto, because people are seeing that connection. But the big concerning number is that number at the bottom, that 48%. So 48% of us in Toronto don't know what to do for climate change. So that's a number to keep in mind when you are embarking on projects or talking with your friends and neighbors about climate, that it is likely that half the people you talk to don't know what to do. And that's scary for folks, right? Like imagine you are very concerned about something that could be devastating for your city or your family or your own livelihood, but you don't know what to do. So you can imagine that it can have some mental health and emotional impacts for sure, but just to be mindful, to be patient with people and to help to understand that they're not alone in not knowing what to do. It's like definitely not alone, because half of us don't know what to do. So just to have that open conversation with people, we have found has been helpful. And don't be afraid just to name it. You know what, it's a big problem and it's scary, but we don't know what to do necessarily. So you can help folks get along that learning journey into what they can do. So the study also looked at what residents are interested in doing, what they might change in terms of their behavior change. So the first one you can see here is around energy. So 60% of folks said they would be likely to make some changes in their energy consumption, which is great. That's a great number. And 54% said they'd be willing to make some energy efficiency improvements in their homes, which is also exciting. But you can see there the barriers, which are not surprising, I would think, to most, is that the barriers are that some of these improvements are very expensive. Some of them are not available. If you're a tenant in a building where you don't have control even over your own utilities, then making energy improvements is not necessarily accessible to you. So there are some barriers that we also need to work with our residents and some of our landlords. Other things is that the barriers that it's inconvenient. That's fair. I understand. But that's something that I think that we can tackle. When it comes to transportation, 52% of people said they'd be willing to try out a lower carbon vehicle, so that's awesome. 42% said they'd be willing to walk or cycle more, and 35% said they would be willing to drive less. So you can see there's lots of opportunities. Like, people are eager for opportunities. They just need to know what to do and to get over some of those barriers. So not available and inconvenient when it comes to active transportation is something that we at the city need to work on, but also that we need to work on outreach to our residents in terms of like safety concerns and infrastructure that's needed in our neighborhoods. But again, I hope you take some hope from this, that people are really willing to make changes if they just know what's available and it's more accessible for people. Finally, when it comes to waste, 59% of people say they're already sorting correctly. I'm sorry, that is not correct. People might think that they're sorting correctly, but we know from our waste diversion statistics that's not accurate in terms of what we see with waste audits. So that's a big eye opener for us, that folks may not be not sorting correctly because they don't want to, but because they really truly don't know. So if 60% of people think they're doing it right, and we know that that is not correct, not accurate, then that's our work cut out for us in doing some outreach and education on waste sorting. And then reducing waste, almost the same number said that they are willing to reduce their waste. So again, there's lots of energy and excitement for people to take action. We just need to make those actions available. So finally, getting into why and how Toronto is addressing climate change. I think we've addressed this quite a bit already. Katie, did you want me to take a break and see if there's any questions in the chat, or are we okay? Or
we do have a few questions and some comments as well, but if it makes sense for you to go through this section, we can get to them after that, whatever works for you.
Sure. If anything comes up, just interrupt me and I am happy to address it. Okay, so as with other countries and municipalities around the world, globally, we are part of the Paris Agreement, where we have agreed to limit the increase of global temperature to under 2 degrees Celsius. And then we've set some targets on how we're going to get there, and you can see them here: a 65% reduction by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2050. I'll get more into that in a second. So finally, getting into the topic at hand, TransformTO is our climate action strategy in the city of Toronto. If you're not familiar with it, it looks like someone linked it into the chat, so thank you for that. But this was unanimously approved by Toronto City Council in 2017, and it's now being implemented. I'm going to get into a little bit more about the net zero in 1 second, but we're now in the process of finishing out some of our short-term strategies with TransformTO, but it really is a long-term strategy in that it lays out actions all the way to 2050. So the update to TransformTO in 2019, so 2 years after the strategy was approved, Toronto City Council voted to declare a climate emergency in Toronto and had asked us to accelerate TransformTO from an 80% reduction of emissions to net zero. So like 100% reduction, really, if you want to look at it like that. So the same amount of time by 2050 or sooner. So what we're doing now is we're working out how we're going to get there by 2040 and by 2050, and what kind of actions under TransformTO need to be accelerated. So that report is to go to council this year, and we expect to have some public information around that, what the actions may be this summer. So you can see here what the target looks like in terms of how quickly we need to dip down there. You can see the 2020 target, we've made it even with our 2018 emissions, so that's awesome. The big dips that we saw in the last decade are really attributed to the phasing out of coal-powered plants in Ontario. So we can't take a lot of credit for that one, but we're happy that we've seen a reduction in emissions. But you can see that red line there is how steep of a decline that we need to get to our targets by 2050. And remembering that Toronto City Council has asked us to get there a little bit earlier if we can, which I think we can. So, and I think we will, because of folks like you. So the targets you can see here, these are the goals. These are the goals that we had laid out to 2050, and these are likely some of them likely to be accelerated to get to our net zero goals by 2040. But you can see here, again, you don't need to memorize any of this stuff, but you can see the reflection of where the big emission sources are. So buildings, so how we heat, cool, and power our buildings, our transportation, how we get around the city, and our waste. So the targets align with those 3 emission sectors. So we're looking at retrofitting all of our buildings by 2050 and building new buildings better by 2030, advancing towards a circular economy with our waste by 2050 or earlier, so hopefully 2040. Looking to have any personal vehicles in Toronto be using low carbon energy, so that's likely to be electric vehicles at this time. And then the big one is the active transportation one, and that folks can really really play a role in, if it's accessible to them, that short trips, which we define as under 5K, which isn't, I don't know if that's short if you're walking, but trips under 5K to be walked or cycled rather than taking any other form of transport. So that's what we're looking at. That's what the city will look like by 2050, if not earlier. The TransformTO has a number of guiding principles, which you can see here. The key thing is just to remember that when we talk about climate action, we don't talk just about reducing emissions, we talk about improving our city in another way. So improving social equity or advancing social equity, improving public health, maintaining and creating new jobs, good jobs, enhancing and strengthening the local economy, all these kind of things. So what's cool, I think, about climate action defined in this way, in that we can really work with our communities on where they're at and what their priorities might be as aligned with improving the livelihood of that neighborhood. And then we define climate action as doing both. So it's both something that reduces emissions and also improves our city in another way. So improving the health, equity, or prosperity of our city. And what's cool though, for me, because I work in community climate action, that I can really have a genuine conversation with communities on what they're interested in improving in their neighborhood, and then help to frame with a climate lens. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that community defines a project as climate action or defines themselves as doing climate action in some way. And that's fine with me. But if we want to get to the community's goals in another way, that's totally fine. But we help communities to frame with the climate lens so we can also work together to reduce those emissions. So I'm almost done my slides so we can get into some questions and some Kahoot. So here's some of the City of Toronto goals. So we tried to put our money where our mouth is. So the city's goals are, you can see the reflection in how they reflect the community's goals. And you don't need to remember any of these, but just to remember that the city's goals are accelerated as compared to the community, with buildings and operations and policies that we have control over with our own city operations. We've accelerated those goals a little bit. So in terms of the progress that we've seen, you can see there has been a steady decline in emissions in Toronto, which is awesome. You would have seen it from the previous slide with the graph as well. And you can see too here that it's broken down by waste, transportation, and buildings, which are 3 emission factors. I've also linked here, it's quite a long link, but I can send these slides around after. This is a link to our most recent greenhouse gas inventory. If you'd like to take a peek at it, it really breaks down each of the sectors with the inventory. It's a public document, and it breaks down some of the reasons why emissions might have gone up or gone down. It's like a kind of a frank conversation about why those things happen, because you can see, for example, with our most recent data in 2018, that our emissions actually did go up a little bit. And some of the reasons why is that 2018 was a much colder winter than 2017. And the use of natural gas, as you would have heard from Ariana's presentation on Monday, is quite a significant emissions factor for us in Toronto. So we had I think it was 10% more cold days, or more days that people really relied on natural gas for heat, and that made a big difference in our emissions for that year. So I would suggest, if you're interested in our emissions pathway, to take a peek at that public document about our greenhouse gas inventory. And then the 2019 data will be coming out in the next 6 or 8 months. It takes some time, as you can imagine. So in terms of our progress to our targets, we are on track to get to our 2020 targets. I know it's weird because 2020 was last year, but if we're looking at our 2018 emissions, we're on track to get to our 2020 targets, which is great. And we can all give ourselves a pat on the back for that one. The progress you can see here is quite substantial, though, to reach our 2030 targets. We need to have our emissions of 2018 within 10 years to get to our 2030 target. So there's a lot to do. And then net zero, we need to reduce 16.2 megatons, which is hard to wrap your head around. I can't really wrap my head around what that looks like. But in the next 10 years is really going to be key for us to be reaching our interim and to our final target. So there is a lot to do in the next decade for sure. So you can see here some of our programs at the City of Toronto that help to support TransformTO and to support residents in action on TransformTO. You can see Better Homes TO is on there. That's Ariana's program. But there's a number of other existing programs that might help you to work on a project or get resources for a project in your community. I'd be happy to send you details or link you with staff working on any of these. That would be helpful to you. You can see at the bottom the Climate Action Fund and the Neighborhood Climate Action Grants are grants that we've provided in the community. This project is one of those, so thank you so much. And we hope to be doing the same type of granting this year. And then potentially some resident grants next year. But we're really excited to be able to offer some funding again for climate action. What that looks like exactly, we haven't fully defined the direction, but there should be something coming out in the next month or so about what that's going to look like for this year. So funding climate action projects in our community. And this is just in case you wanted a little reminder on things that you can do for climate change in your city. You can see reflected here too are the big buckets of the buildings, the transportation and waste. But the other key thing, and I presented this at your launch as well, is the big thing is community. So coming together as a community is so important for climate action. We can't work together. We can't work in a vacuum with this kind of big environmental threat. And it helps to improve our city in terms of social cohesion when our communities come together. So we see that as a key piece. So the 4 pieces of climate action are projects or activities in energy, transportation, and waste, and also in your community. And we have a YouTube video. The link is there too. If you want to take a peek at it, it's a little cartoon. It might be nice if you're ever having a meeting in your community and you wanted to just do a quick little primer on climate action. It's a cute one because it's animated and it's adorable. But it goes through a lot of really quick tips and tricks about TransformTO in less than 3 minutes. So in terms of my work, I just wanted to flag this for folks because I know you all are so well connected in your communities. But I would encourage you, if you can, to reach out to myself or anyone on my team at any time if you are interested in climate action in your community. We'd be very happy and proud to support you in whatever it is you need. There's a list here of what we might provide in terms of resources, but this is not at all an exhaustive list. So let us know if there's something that you need support on. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm available all the time. We also have monthly collaboration hours where folks can drop in. It is virtual right now, so dropping into WebEx just to ask questions or connect with others. It's more like an office hours or an open house format, and you'll be welcome to join anytime you'd like. And yeah, that is my very quick overview. I want to pause for questions, I think, and then we'll get into the Kahoot. Does that sound okay to you, Katie? Yes?
Yep, that sounds great. Thank you. And I was going to say, how can people reach you? And there's your email right there. So megan.mclean@toronto.ca. Thank you for making
I'll pop it in the chat
available.
too, just in case anyone wants to copy it.
Cool, thank you. So there were some specific questions. First was, can we have a copy of these slides?
Yes. Does the data for buildings include just operation or also the construction of buildings? At this point, it's really focused on the operation of buildings. The construction factor in terms of the energy emissions, the transportation emissions, and the waste emissions around construction, I believe is supposed to be included with the next modeling of TransformTO. That's what I heard. Why don't we process our compost to produce renewable natural gas and run our garbage trucks? Yeah, so that again is also in the works. Thanks for asking that, Ray. There's some information on the solid waste website. I can send you a link. about the methane capture at our green bin facilities. And at this point, it is not necessarily powering anything, if at all. Last I checked, which was probably about a year ago, the plan was to be harnessing that methane and to be powering the processing plant itself, as well as some neighboring buildings as a pilot. I don't think there is an update on that. My understanding is that the pandemic has delayed that a little bit, but I can get some more information on that. I don't think there is a plan to run the garbage trucks on that methane capture though, but I could be wrong about that. Greenland Landfill, yes, thank you. Awesome, these links are great, Katie. In Germany, oh yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Margaret. I haven't seen anything specific about like if that's digging through like existing landfills. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Ray. So that's a great, perfect, awesome. Yeah, I don't know how to do the math on that one, but it's quite a significant reduction, right? Val, is there a plan for how we retrofit 100% of our buildings? There are a number of different plans. The one that I think Ari might have talked about is so in terms of private homes, the Home Energy Loan Program is one of the big plans and just got a lot of funding from the federal government. Working with our building sector to provide incentives and rebates for energy improvements and our utilities and energy improvements. Retrofitting some of the larger buildings is a partnership that the City of Toronto is working on with some of the big landholders in terms of energy consumption, but also retrofitting our buildings. So yes, there is a plan. Whether it is the most effective it could be right now, I don't think so. I think there's a lot that needs to be done. There's also a lot of pushback from industry, right? Like retrofits can, well, in the long run, they would be less expensive in terms of energy consumption. They're pretty expensive in the short term. So the city helps to provide like low interest loans and connections to loans and connections to incentives, but there needs to be some more significant uptake for sure. Can TransformTO help to intervene with other city departments to help facilitate community climate initiatives? Amazing, that's a great question. Thank you, Lily. So one of the cool things that my colleagues in policy and research are working on is a climate lens strategy for the City of Toronto. So every time a city division makes a decision on behalf of the City of Toronto, it has to have a climate lens on it. There's already a climate lens brewing at the financial planning department, which is exciting. So when we make financial decisions, that there should be an equity lens on those decisions. But yes, we do have a little bit of ability to intervene with other city policies and mechanisms, and that is in the works as we speak. So thank you. Carol, can we simplify recycling so it's more possible? Oh gosh, that is a good question. That recycling is very challenging, especially if say you live outside of the city and you work inside the city. You have two different recycling systems. All municipalities are different in some way. There are some like little tips that the City of Toronto website has and how you can remember recycling, like black plastics, no. If you do a stretch test on bags, if it doesn't stretch, it's not accepted in the recycling. There's like little tips like that. I can also flag the Waste Wizard app is a good one, or you can do it online as well. And that's the TO Waste Wizard app. And you can type in what item you have and it'll tell you what bin it goes in. But yes, it is very challenging. I hear you. And I mess up too, and this is like what I do, so. Can Toronto introduce building code bylaws that sit on top of the Ontario Building Code? Yes, it can. And that's like part of the Toronto Green Standard. Is there city buyback for plastic like water and soda bottles? No. Can apartment building, oh, that's a good one. What can apartment building tenants and residents do to manage food waste when options are limited? There's lots of, so the city has a program called, oh my gosh, I just lost it. The ambassador program. Oh my gosh, how did I just lose that name? Anyway, there's an ambassador program that the city of Toronto will support.
3 hours.
3 hours, thank you. Oh my gosh, Friday afternoon. The 3 Hours Ambassador Program can help provide resources and support and training to do outreach with your fellow tenants. But one of the key things is to talk to your property manager about the infrastructure around food waste. That's one of the biggest barriers for multi-residential is the infrastructure for dealing with compost. Have staff looked at donut economics and how the measure of economics and how we are doing should be tied? Yeah, that is an interesting one. And I was just on a webinar about that. And I can't really comment so much about that with my particular work, but I can send you some resources, Leah, if you're interested on that. Yeah, I can't comment so much about that, but that's a good point. Oh, and thank you, Ray, for connecting the Waste Wizard. That's awesome. Great question. Should we play a game? Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
We're all up, so go ahead.
Okie dokie. So we're going to play Kahoot. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can see everyone. Okay. If you haven't played Kahoot before, it's really fun. I'm going to link it again in the chat. And basically, it is a trivia, multiple choice, or true and false game. It's going to be pretty quick. I'm just going to share my screen again. Just a second. Oh, sorry, all lost here. Sorry, I'm like, I almost tried to join my own game. Hang on a second here. Here we go. Okay, so here's the Kahoot page. Whoops, sorry, whoops, goodness. Okay, here's the Kahoot page. And so if you go to your device, you're gonna go to kahoot.it and type in the game code. If you can, it would be best if you can, oh no, I'm not sharing again, sorry. Here we go, there we go. Share. There we go. I did it. Finally. Oh my goodness gracious. So if you can, you'll still want to be able to see this screen because that's where the questions will be. If you can't, I'm also going to read them out, but it will be challenging because we kind of have to be fast. So while people are getting sorted, I will say, so Kahoot is about, not just about getting the answers right, but it's also about getting them fast. So even if you know every single answer, if you're like, slow on the uptake, you might not win. And you can really only see like the top couple people. So don't worry about it if you're in the bottom ranks. Nobody will know. Nobody can see it. Plus you could pick a fake name if you wanted. No one would have any idea. And it's all just for fun. This isn't a test. It isn't to like make sure that you listen to me drone on and on and on about the climate action strategy. Yeah, so it's just for fun. So I see we have 10 players so far. I'll wait another minute or so, and then we'll get started. Is anyone having any trouble? Just unmute yourself if you are. Sounds good. So I'll wait another 30 seconds. If you haven't joined and you want to join, please join in the next 30 seconds.
Could you maybe just say the PIN out loud, Megan?
Oh, of course, yes. Yes, so the game PIN is 1224459.
Okay, brilliant, thank you.
So I will read the questions out, but I just want to let you know, so it's on my other screen, so I won't be looking at you. Sorry about that. I'm also not playing, so it's not, I'm not cheating. I do know the answers, I hope. Okay, I think we're gonna get started. Okay, here we go. So on your phone, you'll have the colors associated with the answers. You'll see in a second, so don't panic. but you won't see the question on your phone. You'll only see it on this screen, but I will read it out. And then you just hit the answer as fast as you can. Here we go. The question is, what is TransformTO? Is it a plan to launch Toronto into space? Is it Toronto's climate action strategy? Is it the Transformers Toronto chapter? Or is it electrical transformer locations? So if you want to pick the color and shape on your other device. You don't have a lot of time, so nice, good job. Oh, someone picked launch into space. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay, anyone have any questions before I get on to the next question? You good? Okay, here we go. All right, see the scoreboard. What are the three main sources of emissions in Toronto? Buildings, transportation and waste, technology, aviation and manufacturing, transportation, waste and manufacturing, houses, cars, and landfills. Nice. Let's see who's on the board. Whoa, very nice. Tricky. Oh, that was a tricky question. I'm sorry for that one. VJE still on the top. Love it. Here we go. How can you be a part of transforming Toronto and select all that apply? So reduce your emissions, walk and cycle, reduce waste, and get involved. So you select more than one here, and then you click submit. Nice, good job, everybody. Yay, this is the 4 key factors, awesome. Ray takes the lead. So true or false, buildings are the largest emitter of harmful emissions in Toronto. Very nice, good job, everybody. Wow, you're really listening, or you knew all this stuff and I just bored you for the last 45 minutes. Ray in the lead, and Lily on the streak. Well done, Lily. So when was TransformTO adopted by Toronto City Council? This is a tricky one. Also, your question might be, who cares when it was, when it was adopted, but 2010, 2020, 2017, or 2015? Nice. Wow, people are really listening. I love it. Ooh, Maria, you're on a streak. True or false? As Toronto's population grows, emissions go up. Ooh, that was a trick, eh? So it is false. We have seen that as our population grows, our emissions have not also gone up. Nice, Lily on the streak, 6 answers in a row. So emissions from passenger vehicles make up what percentage of transportation emissions? Sorry, this is a tricky one. Remember that most of our emissions from transportation come from our own vehicles. Nice, that was a tricky one. 73%, well done. True or false? We have a goal to reduce emissions by 65% by 2030. True or false? Nice, Good job. Everyone's doing so well. This is great. So smart. Oh, Natsuki, answer streak. Okay, which of the following is not a target of TransformTO? 75% walking or cycling, 100% of existing buildings be retrofitted, 100% of landfills will be closed by 2040, or advancing towards a circular economy. This is a tough one. I gave extra time on this one because I knew it was going to take me a long time to read it out too. So is it about walking and cycling? Is it about existing buildings? Is it about landfills? Or is it about a circular economy? Nice. Wow. It's the landfills. We would like for them all to be closed, but that's places to go. Leah takes the lead. True or false? Extreme weather events have happened in Toronto. Nice. Well done, everybody. You guys are getting so fast at it. Quick on the draw. Leah is still in the lead. In what year will all new buildings in Toronto need to be designed to be near zero emission buildings? This is a trick. Nice, it's 2030, pretty soon. And we're over halfway done. True or false? 98% of the emissions from waste are from our landfills. Nice, it's true, yes. Big part of our emissions come from our landfills. What percentage of Torontonians believe that everybody should reduce their emissions? Nice, 91%. I hope you all count yourself in the 91% too. Leah, on a streak and taking the lead. 11 answers in a row, amazing. But true or false? Most of the emissions from transportation come from our personal vehicles. I just said this earlier. True or false? Spoiler alert. Nice, good job. Leah still in the lead. True or false? Weather and climate are the same. Nice. So smart. Doris with a streak. I love it. So which building type contributes the most emissions in Toronto? Residential, industrial, institutional, or commercial? We're almost done too. Only 5 questions left. For all the marbles. Nice. Yes, residential. And what percentage of Torontonians don't know what to do to address climate change? Yes, you're right. Wow, I thought it was going to be really tricky because it's about half. Well done. Leah. True or false? Toronto declared a climate emergency in 2021. Oh yeah, this is the trick question. So it declared a climate emergency in 2019. Trick. Leah on a streak. true or false? We need 100% of vehicles in Toronto to be low carbon by 2050. True. Yes. Awesome. All right. 2 questions. Select the co-benefits of climate action. So select all that apply. Improving public health, supporting poverty reduction, advancing social equity, enhancing and strengthening the local economy. Are these co-benefits of climate action? Yay, 100% on that one, love it. And the last question is a bit of a fun one. It will require you to type in. So if you can share with us all a word or 2 on what motivates you or what might motivate you to take climate action in your community. So you have about, I think, 2 minutes to think about it. You can only do 1 submission, so word or 2, and then it's going to build a word cloud for us. I think we have most people, so just be counting down. Oh, there we go. A couple more answers. I'm sorry, Katie, I didn't end it 5 minutes early like I thought I would. I apologize. Sorry about that.
All good. This is an important part here.
All right, 20 seconds if you haven't submitted your answer, and then we'll see what folks think. Three, two, one. Okay. Oh, nice. Love for nature and kids. Desperation. So we see some positives and some negatives. Very interesting. Very interesting. Our children getting involved, climate justice, connect with community. Awesome. These are great. These are really, really great submissions. Thank you all. And it's interesting to see the difference in motivation. Some people are motivated in a hopeful way or a positive way. Some are motivated from the fear way, which is also fine. Whatever motivates you to take action is great. But we hope that we can instill hope in everyone. So if you're not quite there yet, let's connect. I'm happy to chat with you about how we can have some hope in the action that's happening in our city. So final results of who won. Leah in first place, followed by VJE, and followed by Ray. Well done. Give yourselves a round of applause. You did so well. That was awesome. Oh, sorry, Ray, there is not a prize. The prize is pride. Well done. Does anyone have any, I know we're running short on time, so maybe I'll just let Katie take it, and then if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stay afterwards, or you can just shoot me an email. Work?
Absolutely. I would say, Ray, keep taking your climate action, and then one day you'll play a game that does have a prize. I'm sure of it. It's bound to happen. But thank you, Megan. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And that was lots of fun. This is all about bringing the community together. So I just want to turn it over to Tamar another member of the ACAI team to tell you a little bit more about the other sessions that we have coming up and the other opportunities. So Tamar, please take it away.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Megan, for such detailed presentation, and I'm sure that the participant enjoyed the information that was presented today. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be sharing with you participants the link to the survey that we are asking you to kindly complete for us, because this is a part of our monitoring and evaluation process. It will also help us, and we will also be sharing some of the information with Megan so that she too can use it to guide future presentation going forward. And so therefore I'm asking you to click on the link and you can complete the survey shortly after the session. Secondly, I want to get you up to speed with a number of training sessions that we are going to be having. So we would have had the session with Megan today, and come March 15, that's Monday, we are going to be having a session with Climate Fast, the kitchen table conversation, and that will take place on the 15th of March, and we will start at 7 p.m. Now, we will also be having training on March 22nd with Cycle Toronto. And so I'm also encouraging you to be a part of that one. And March 23rd, we will have another presentation from the Rexdale Women's Center. And on March 29, we will again have Climate Fast or Kitchen Table Conversation. So those are the remaining sessions that we are going to be having in March. And so, the invitation is open for you to attend. We want to build the momentum. This is very informative, and that's the only way we are going to be able to continue to contribute in terms of making a difference within the field of climate change, sustainable development, etc. So the sessions are there. If you also go on ACAI's website, you will see the sessions and in terms of their schedule. So once again, I really want to thank you. The survey link has been provided, so you can proceed with completing the survey. And thank you again, Megan. I really enjoyed the session, quite detailed, quite comprehensive. So thank you, and that's it for me. Over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Tamar. And just two more things. So part of the program as well is the biking part. So this is our contribution to active transportation as part of TransformTO. So we have a number of bikes that are available at the Rexdale Women's Center Share, Reuse and Learning Hub. That's at 2667 Kipling Avenue. So we have a number of bikes there that are available for training sessions one-on-one. And then you can also, for having participated in 3 of these sessions, apply to receive a bike permanently. So there are quite a number of sessions coming up already. Tamara's mentioned some of the ones in March, but there will also be more in April and May too. So if you're interested in a bike, we want to get people out learning how to ride bikes and also having a bike of their own. So please take a look at that link there and apply, capnetwork.ca/apply for a bike. Thanks to the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, they've also provided a number of trees. They're trying to plant fruit and shade trees to increase our shade cover in Toronto. And so trees are available up to 25 for private property. So if you live in the city of Toronto and you have a private property and you would like a tree planted on it, I will also ask you to take a look at that form that we've just put in the chat box there, and you can indicate your interest and we'll get you in touch with them. So it could be a good opportunity to get a tree or a bike. If you do have a bike that you want to give, on the other hand, thank you, Carol, that's also most welcome, because what we can do that we have the hub up there is to have bikes coming in and going out. So, we don't want to just stop doing this once this first fleet of bikes is gone. We'll hope to set up an exchange program so people can bring their old bikes to the hub, and others who need them can come get them repaired and sign them back out. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for participating, everyone. Carol will be in touch with you about that bike. That's great. And please, we encourage you to fill out the survey and see you in the next sessions. Thanks again, Megan. We will hopefully be able to send out those slides afterwards, and we'll be in touch with you all. Have a wonderful afternoon, wonderful weekend. Take care, stay safe, and see you all soon. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.